We're in Revelation chapter 11 today. It's like the final part of the first half of the book of Revelation. I'm sitting here with my fellow Montana hillbilly / Bible nerd, Nathan. What's up? Dude, what do you think about when you think about this passage of the Bible? What comes to mind first?
Well, what comes to mind first is what on earth does all this stuff mean? Because there's a lot of imagery here. I see this story about these two witnesses that are breathing fire. So there's like human dragons in Revelation. We already have dragons. Now we have human dragons breathing fire on people.
Love it.
And honestly, what comes to mind is what I remember seeing when I watched the Left Behind movies when I was a kid, because they pretty dramatically displayed kind of this scene in those movies. And
it was like two guys.
Yeah, it's like two dudes standing in Jerusalem in the temple courts, breathing out fire onto people. It was dope. It was pretty cool. Kirk Cameron was living the life back in those days. And as much as I enjoyed kind of the like cinematic experience as a kid, as I read back now, I feel like there's a whole lot more for me as a believer in Jesus.
Yeah.
There's a whole lot more communicative power of this passage for the church than if we only view it in the perspective of at some point in the distant future, two dudes will breathe fire at people.
Yeah.
Dude, that's cool, but this
do you know the guy who produces
cooler.
The Chosen is like the son
Yeah.
of the guy who either Tim
Jenkins.
LaHaye or Jerry
Yeah.
Jenkins.
Yeah.
Okay, Jerry Jenkins.
Yep.
His kid is the Chosen director.
Yeah.
And well, first of all, that show just brings me to tears like every time.
Come on.
Like I'm a basket case when I watch that show.
Yep.
But secondly, it's done its homework.
Yeah.
It's super well done. My only small critique is that all the accents are actually not Jewish. They're all Palestinian accents.
Well,
because interestingly, Jesus, his grandparents or something are Egyptians. So he anchored his dialect to an Arabic English, like an Arabic speaker speaking instead of a Hebrew speaker speaking English. But besides that little issue, what I find cool is that the son of the Left Behind guy did his Bible homework in a really profound way and is impacting the American Christian imagination in a really cool way, just like his dad did, but maybe in a healthier way.
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a testament to the fact that impact and reach are not always the measurement of faithful interpretation.
Yeah.
So you can reach a lot of people with something.
Super well said.
And honestly, it can be so easy to like dig in and dive into a worldview biblically. But if that worldview doesn't have a kind of healthy hermeneutic behind it, it can lead people down a path of interpretation that can be a little bit confusing in retrospect or cause anxiety or kind of looking to the news and the headlines. I mean, if we're not living through right now, like the fever dream of someone from the dispensationalist kind of perspective, with everything that's happening in Israel and Iran and
Everybody's
Russia.
like texting me like, this pastor says this end times thing and this pastor says this 10 times. Yeah.
I mean, if growing up in the 90s as a Christian kid looking at the book of Revelation, if there was ever a time where I imagined there being a war that included Russia and Iran and Israel and the United States all in one, I'm like, that's it, bro. We got to get ready to rock and roll. But as I've dug more into this passage, as I've read some scholars, like some of the books I have here in front of me with the Anchor Yale Bible and with Richard Bauckham and others, it feels like there's more going on here. And it feels like what John, the Revelator, is trying to help us see is that the church has an active, not passive role to play. Our job isn't just to sit back, read the news, or to sit back and try to predict dates. It's to be active in our witness to Jesus. And so just the way that this passage is structured here, we first off have to remember that when John was writing this scroll, he was not writing in verse numbers or chapters.
Right.
So to some extent, chapters are a little bit arbitrary. Verse numbers are a little bit arbitrary. Most commentators will refer to the first half of this chapter as kind of the interlude conclusion of the third cycle of what's happening in this portion of Revelation. And then the seventh trumpet, beginning in verse 15 of chapter 11, continuing is like the fourth cycle. So even just in the way that this chapter is structured, it's kind of bridging two portions of the book that are, of course, meant to be together, but also are interluding into something else.
Yeah.
And you feel that as you read through it, which we're about to do, you'll feel that verses 15 and onward do feel like the beginning of a new thought or are taking you down a different road.
Yeah. And just as a reminder, man, when I before we started this series, I blocked off a couple hours, big cup of coffee, and read through the whole book in one sitting. It is enormously helpful to not break it up into little exposures, but to be like, oh, I see how this works.
Yep.
And for example, you've got the fire-breathing humans in this chapter. In the next chapter, there's a dragon who's spitting out water like a river.
Yeah.
And you're like, wait a minute, I just saw somebody spitting out fire. It's so much easier to make these connections when they're closer together in your actual time exposure.
100%.
So
100%. Yeah. So let's take just a moment. I'm actually gonna, instead of beginning on verse 1 of chapter 11, I want to begin on verse 8 of chapter 10. Okay. So verse 8 of chapter 10 continuing says, Then the voice that I had heard from heaven spoke to me once more, Go, take the scroll that lies open in the hand of the angel who is standing on the sea and on the land. Which, that depiction, that idea of an angel standing on the sea and on the land is super cool. That's why I love this book right here. It actually has a picture of, I'm going to see if our camera can
we can overlay it in post-production.
By any extent. Check this out. It's amazing. But it's a picture of the Roman emperor standing on the sea and on the land, like a depiction of his power over both. It's super interesting.
We also mentioned in the last episode that there was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world is the Colossus of Rhodes, which was this major statue, like the Statue of Liberty, that bestrode the harbor, but it looked like it had 1 foot on the land, 1 foot on the sea. So that could be another potential pop culture reference in the background in the first century.
Yep, 100%. But as he continues here, he says, So I, John, I went to the angel. I asked him to give me the little scroll. He said to me, Take it and eat it. It will turn your stomach sour, but in your mouth it will be sweet as honey. I took the little scroll from the angel's hand and I ate it. It tasted sweet as honey in my mouth, but when I had eaten it, my stomach turned sour. Then I was told, You must prophesy again about many people, nations, languages, and kings. And I think this is an important setting the stage because how we approach this image of 2 of what seem like God's people breathing fire on people, this isn't like a woohoo. We're starting off with a message that was sweet to the tongue, but bitter in the stomach.
Yeah.
And I think part of the prophetic task in the Old Testament and in Revelation is not, y'all better look out because God's going to take you out and he likes me and you're going to get destroyed.
Yeah.
It's like a lamentation because I know God's justice. I want to use my message and my witness to bring you to a saving knowledge of who God is. Yeah. But I also recognize that if you reject that, you're bringing onto yourself the wrath of God. And I know what that looks like. I know, God, I weep and I mourn that you're about to experience this judgment. But I think it's important to recognize again that his stomach is turned sour. And for anyone who has ever preached a harsh message or felt like God has given them a burden to share something, maybe you've even just been in a moment of conflict management with someone that you care about. You feel that that message you have to share with someone turning your stomach into knots. And that's what I imagine John is feeling as he's about to prophesy.
The real prophet loves the ones they rebuke.
Yes.
And a lot of would-be prophets don't.
Yeah. And I think, frankly, that's a test. If we're looking around today, there are a lot of people who will use that term prophet for what they do. They have the websites and the TV shows and all that stuff. It seems sometimes like they don't pass that critical heart check test for me. And that makes me wonder whether this is someone who's a prophet coming truly from the heart of God or someone who is a little bit more, frankly, a culture warrior. And there is a difference there. As I begin to read here in chapter 11, we'll get through this whole passage and then we'll go back.
Yeah, should we just take it in a shot?
So here we go.
How many verses are you going to read?
I'm going to read the first 14 verses, okay? Right. We'll read this first chunk.
Cool.
So and I'm reading out of the NIV 1984, okay? So I got
baller.
my NIV before the 2011
super
update.
Retro, bro.
It's super retro.
Let's do it.
Here we go. I was given a reed like a measuring rod and was told, Go and measure the temple of God and the altar and count the worshipers there. But exclude the outer court. Do not measure it because it has been given to the Gentiles. They will trample on the holy city for 42 months. And I will give power to my 2 witnesses. They will prophesy for 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the 2 olive trees and the 2 lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. If anyone tries to harm them, fire comes from their mouths and devours their enemies. This is how anyone who wants to harm them must die. These men have power to shut up the sky so that it will not rain during the time they are prophesying, and they have power to turn the waters into blood and to strike the earth with every kind of plague as often as they want. Now, when they have finished their testimony, the beast that comes up from the abyss will attack them and overpower and kill them. Their bodies will lie in the street of the great city, which is figuratively called Sodom and Egypt, where also their Lord was crucified. For 3.5 days, men from every people, tribe, language, and nation will gaze on their bodies and refuse them burial. The inhabitants of the earth will gloat over them and will celebrate by sending each other gifts because these 2 prophets had tormented those who live on the earth. But after the 3.5 days, a breath of life from God entered them, and they stood on their feet, and terror struck those who saw them. Then they heard a loud voice from heaven saying to them, "Come up here." And they went up to heaven in a cloud, while their enemies looked on. At that very hour, there was a severe earthquake, and 1/10 of the city collapsed. 7,000 people were killed in the earthquake, and the survivors were terrified and gave glory to the God of heaven. The second woe has passed. The third woe is coming soon. So we'll stop there. We'll read that second section of chapter 11 in a little bit. But I want to linger on these first 14 verses because there's a lot here where John is reflecting back on some stuff from the Old Testament. And I think the most obvious of this is he's talking about 2 prophets, and he's talking about maybe some miracles that these 2 prophets are able to do. And these are a callback to some prophets from the Old Testament. So if you're watching or you're listening and you have the ability to type some stuff in the YouTube comments, you want to do that, I want you guys to comment what prophets you think they're talking about from the Old Testament, because that's kind of fun. There's a bunch of different stuff listed here. But Ryan, when you read this, when you see these 2 prophets, what are some things that come to mind as you're reading through some of the stuff that they're doing here?
Yeah, some details that stood out to me, like clothed in sackcloth. That's the garb of mourning. Yeah. And this gets to your point. Like this is bitter in the stomach. We're not pumped about this.
Yep.
This is a tragedy. We're wearing funeral clothes.
Yeah.
So that I think is important. I think also some of this like numerology stuff. 1,263 or 60 days.
Yep.
42 months.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that's the exact same amount of time.
It is 3.5 years.
It's 3.5, and then after 3.5 days, the spirit of life from God. Why that matters is 3.5 is half 7.
Yep.
We know John loves 7s as a number of perfection. So it seems to be like deliberately half of the perfect number.
Yep.
So it's less than perfect. It's suboptimal, and it's also bounded.
Yeah.
But I think it's important to see how the 3.5 motif ties up with the 7 motif.
Yes.
That stands out to me.
Yeah. I think it's John's way of saying something bad's going to happen, but it's not going to last forever. There is, like you said, it's bounded. There's not kind of this expectation that there's going to be something going on forever and ever and ever and ever and ever.
Yeah. So another thing that stands out to me, Nathan, is this whole we talked about in this last episode how prophecy often in the Bible was enacted with some sort of symbolic action.
Yes.
And so, hey, here's a measuring tape. Go start measuring stuff. And this is what it looks like to prophesy. But we see this in a few places in the Old Testament. We see this in Ezekiel 40.
Yep.
Ezekiel 40 through 48 is one of these huge, like, architectural passages from the Old Testament that unless you know what's going on, you're like, why in the heck is this in the Bible? This is extremely boring.
Yep.
Also in Zechariah chapter 2.
Yep.
There's the same thing. But I think this sort of like phase shift of the New Testament is this idea that the church is the new temple.
Yes.
So when we see John measuring a temple, we shouldn't go straight in our minds maybe to like, oh, he's in Jerusalem physically measuring a building or the New Jerusalem. Maybe it's a way of talking about the people of God. And I think that, so that stands out to me.
Yeah.
I don't know, what stands out to you?
Yeah. When I look at this, first off, the sackcloth thing kind of jumped off the page at me because it reminds me of one of my favorite stories of an Old Testament prophet, the one who really got it wrong and who missed God's heart, and that's Jonah. And I think like Jonah is like the counter case here. In the book of Jonah, when he has this prophecy to give to the people of Nineveh, he doesn't want to go because he doesn't want God to give them grace. He does not want God's mercy to reach the people of Nineveh. And the funny thing is that when he finally does give the prophecy, they're all wearing sackcloth, even like the cows are repenting. And the only thing that Jonah is wearing is a bad attitude. And I feel like, looking good, here in the moment
right there,
where like John has every right to be writing about, see all the stuff that the peoples of the earth are doing. Like, we should be happy that we're pouring out wrath on them. No, like it's through this wearing of sackcloth, it's the bitterness in the stomach. It's reminding people that we are not pleased with the fact that even though God's wrath is just, it will be poured out on people that are made in his image. And that because of their refusal of God's attempts to give them grace and to give them a chance to come to him through Christ, they haven't accepted it. And they haven't accepted it.
This reminds me of like, one of the big hangups for a lot of people with the Bible is like, dude, there's a lot of violence in here. And God seems to not only be cool with it, but sometimes command it. What do I do with that? And just like, I loved how you brought us back to the end of chapter 10 to frame this up. No, this is a bitter thing. Just so in the book of Genesis, the whole setup to the human story, a big theme is God being brokenhearted about the violent turn in human nature. And this is the lead up to the flood story where God says, we got to start over because everybody's so violent. And it's so important to see that as ground zero for who God is, because if you don't, you're gonna really get the wrong idea as you read what follows.
100%. So the sackcloth thing that jumped off the page, and then when we see these two figures, these two prophets, these two witnesses is what they're called, which I think that's important. It's important that it's using the word witness.
Why is that important?
Well, when we look throughout the book of Revelation, we're seeing this idea of witness, faithfulness, this faithful witness all the time. And had it just said prophets, it might excuse maybe a different interpretation. But where I think we're going to land as we look at this passage is when it says witness, and it says these two witnesses, it lists some attributes of them. This is meant to be understood as the church, as the people of God, the faithful people of God, not just as two individuals.
Wait a minute, how do you get there? How do you get?
We'll get there. We'll get there.
Okay.
But first, before we get into all of the the application and where we're ending, I want to take a look at two things. So we see that measuring rod. Okay. Why is he being given a measuring rod? What's the point of measuring something? And as we look in the Old Testament, there's a number of different times where a measuring rod, this idea of God measuring out something to either be measured and whatever has been measured will be spared, to be measured and whatever has been measured will be devoted to destruction. But we see something happening that, we look at that in like the book of Amos. I think it's chapter 7, this idea of the plumb line. Chapter 7 says, this is what he showed me. The Lord was standing by a wall that had been built true to plumb with a plumb line in his hand. The Lord asked me, what do you see, Amos? See, a plumb line, I replied. Then the Lord said, look, I'm setting a plumb line among my people Israel. I will spare them no longer. The high places of Isaac will be destroyed. The sanctuaries of Israel will be ruined. My sword I will rise against the house of Jeroboam. So we see that idea of this like measurement taking place. In that case, it's a measurement for the sake of destruction. It's a measurement of God saying, I'm holding up this line of measurement and what I'm measuring isn't measuring up. And it's time for it to be destroyed. I can't keep ignoring it. But Zechariah, which we talked about this in the last episode we did together, Zechariah figures heavily into John's writing of Revelation. And I'm going to read just a portion here of Zechariah chapter 2 because this is going to map onto so much from Revelation 11.
And then we also need Zechariah 4. In a minute.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So here's part of what we see in Zechariah 2. Then I looked up, there before me was a man with a measuring line in his hand. I asked, where are you going? He answered me, to measure Jerusalem, to find out how wide and how long it is. Then the angel who was speaking to me left, and another angel came to meet him and said to him, run, tell that young man, Jerusalem will be a city without walls because of the great number of men and livestock in it. And I myself will be a wall of fire around it, declares the Lord, and I will be its glory within.
Wow.
So we see this
wall of fire.
idea of fire, this measurement of the city. We see God's presence as like the fire within the city. So I think, again, there's some stuff that, though not all of this is being mapped into Revelation 11, it's in the background of what John's writing, because he's clearly copying Zechariah's homework here.
Right. The other, another major thing, and I don't want to get too far ahead, but another thing that's just like, oh, this is so important to see, is that the way these two martyrs are described sounds a lot like Moses with the plagues.
Yep.
And Elijah was shutting with the drought and shutting up the heavens.
Yep.
Like we've seen these guys before.
Yep.
And I think that it's just really important to see that.
100%.
Okay, so
100%.
Go for it.
So then John sees these two figures. After he's been given this reed, like a measuring rod to measure the temple.
Yeah.
He then sees these two witnesses, and he's told that they're the two trees. They're the two lampstands. Well, where have we seen lampstands before?
Revelation
in the book of Revelation.
Anybody? The church.
The church. Like the 7 lampstands are the 7 churches, which are stand-in for church, the faithful people of God.
Yeah.
And Richard Bauckham has a great line on this. I'll see if I can find it later, but he says that it's pretty clearly an intentional reflection back on that point, that though the number 2 is used, he's talking about the church in its function as a faithful witness to God. So Zechariah chapter 4.
Yeah.
We'll read part of this. We'll see exactly what John is talking about, because he just makes this casual reference. It's the 2 trees and the lampstands. You're like,
oh yeah, the 2 olive trees. Obviously, you know which ones I'm talking.
The 2 olive trees.
Which ones? Which olive trees?
Okay. So here's Zechariah 4. Then the angel who talked with me returned, wakened me as a man is wakened from his sleep. He asked me, "What do you see?" I answered, "I see a solid gold lampstand with a bowl at the top and 7 lights on it, with 7 channels to the lights, and there are 2 olive trees by it, one on the right of the bowl and the other on its left." I asked the angel who talked with me, "What are these, my lord?" He answered, "Do you not know what these are?" "No, my lord," I replied.
I'm sorry. I always want to read either in a British accent or like a Southern accent.
Absolutely. I think of Monty Python and the Holy Grail. "And you shall feast on the orangutans and the breakfast cereals." Yeah, I love it.
I hope that's not irreverent. Sorry, Lord. Okay.
All of the prophetic stuff that we're seeing in Zechariah and other places, we notice that even the person receiving the revelation is confused.
Yes. It's a big part of the apocalyptic genre. Daniel's confused all the time.
And I think I just want to linger there for 1 second.
Yep.
Because what a lot of like pop culture Christian stuff on end times tries to do is give you, here's the completed puzzle with every single thing you need to know, and now it all makes sense. Decoding the whatever. And I just want to tell you, if you walk away feeling like you're more convinced and sure than even the person who was with the angel and with the presence of God, who was confused, just like take that book and just throw it away, because they're selling you something that God isn't selling you. Like God is telling you there is mystery here.
Right.
There's unclarity here. And it's intentional. Dr. Michael Heiser, who's a really interesting academic who has actually since gone to be with the Lord, passed away from cancer a couple years ago. He says, if God is laying out his framework for how he's going to wrap things up and deal with evil once and for all, he's not going to lay it out in such a clear and absolute way that his divine enemies are going to be able to read it and be like, well, we know exactly what's coming and when. Yeah. There's supposed to be some element of mystery, but mystery that provides, and this is important, hope. Mm-hmm. Provides hope for God's people. Mm-hmm. And it provides a sense of coming destruction for those who were aligned against God.
Yeah, as I was doing some study, I came across this phrase from Ron Herm's class, and Ron Herm's going to walk us through chapter 13 in a couple weeks. And he talked about how the book of Revelation helps us develop a hopeful hermeneutic of suspicion.
Yes.
So there is a dimension of suspicion where you're saying, wait a minute, where's the beast behind this? Where's the lie behind this? And yet it's not a sort of like withering cynicism.
Yeah.
It's actually inflected with hope.
Yeah.
And I think that's so important. It's what's often so missing in the sort of the critical theory land. There's often a pseudo hope there. This is real hope.
Yeah.
And man, that is necessary, because some people who are like super hopeful and super optimistic verge on the naive.
Yeah.
And it's like, dude, no, you're not seeing the problems.
Yep.
There's problems. But then on the other hand, people who are like see nothing but problems, I just like want to take them to the empty tomb and be like, actually, there's more to the story.
Yep.
And so I love the balance that this gives us.
And I also love that we're coming into a moment in our culture as a country, but also demographically in the culture of people who are coming up in Gen Z and Gen Alpha, who are embracing that hermeneutic of hopeful suspicion. Okay.
How do you see that? Where is that?
So I look at like my generation, your generation of like
Are you a millennial?
20 and 30 something millennial hipsters who look at everything as that's not cool anymore. Everything's lame. And
so ironic.
I think part of it is we saw a lot of
so boring
bummers throughout life, and we want to act like we're too cool to actually be entertained and embrace anything with our whole heart anymore. And there's a coming movement of people across our culture, and especially in the younger generations, who are not naive. Okay, they have access to all the stuff that's going on just like we do, but they're tired of just being bitter about everything. They're tired of being hopeless about everything just because things are dire. And I think just like culturally and pastorally, this is something to embrace and lean into, that growing sense within the people of our church and across our country. Because I really believe that there's something healthy about that, about having a sense of hope and joy, even when we recognize things aren't great.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to let that determine how I approach my life. And so as we look at kind of how John is dealing with that in Revelation, so we just read a couple portions there of Zechariah. Okay. We've seen some of what he's talking about with those images of the lampstands, these two olive trees. The angel tells him the olive trees are the two servants that are serving the Lord of the whole earth. And so we're looking, I'm going to read here again just a portion of this. So they're clothed in sackcloth. They're the two olive trees, the two lampstands that stand before the Lord of the earth. So again, kind of taking that phrasing from Zechariah. If anyone tries to harm them, fire comes from their mouths and devours their enemies. This is how anyone who wants to harm them must die. These men have power to shut up the sky so it won't rain. They have power to turn waters into blood, to strike the earth with every kind of plague.
Moses and
so
Elijah.
Very clearly, a referent to Moses and Elijah. And as I read through this portion and the next couple portions about their death, their eventual resurrection, the earthquake that follows it, I'm seeing like three things here that are stacked on top of each other. I'm seeing the prophetic tradition of the Old Testament. I'm seeing we, the church, as faithful witnesses to God. I'm also seeing just Jesus. Like there was someone who could do all kinds of miracles through the power of God. There was someone who was killed and who on the third day rose again, and who was gloated over in his death, but who after his resurrection, there was an earthquake. Anyway, I feel like there's multiple things that I'm seeing here.
Yeah.
Are you noticing any of that when you read this? What are some things that you're noticing?
Yeah, the word for witness, testimony, that word in Greek is martyria, martyr.
Yeah.
And that's where we get the idea of a martyr who, rather than compromise, they'd rather die.
Yeah.
And these witnesses are martyrs.
Yep.
And they followed the Jesus pattern in that way. And what's amazing is and I think this is true, there's credence to the idea that the beast, the monster, whatever, we're going to talk about those in coming chapters, is pointing to Rome, the imperial propaganda system and this and that. And John is saying the blood of the martyrs is going to overcome that, is more powerful than that. Think about just at an historical level how that prophecy came true.
Yeah.
I mean, the Roman Empire at its highest levels succumbed to the Jesus message within a couple hundred years.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, here's a guy in the first century who sees which way the wind is blowing and is saying, you know what's more powerful than the Caesars is this message right here. And this is and it came to pass. One of the teachers of the early church said that the blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church.
Yeah.
And so I think that like at a raw historical level, that stands out to me.
Well, I think that idea of faithfulness and faithful witness is pointed to again and again by the fact that God's people are never shown with any weapon other than the weapon of their mouth. Every time you see a weapon on anybody that's on God's side, it's like a sword in his mouth, fire from their mouth, the word of their testimony. And I think that there's something
Language
there.
Is powerful.
There's something there for us to be considering as Christians.
Yeah.
And a lot of people can land at a lot of different places about what we do with violence in the here and now. Okay, Revelation provides us assurance that God will deal with this once and for all.
Yeah.
I think there is like space for us as Christians to have honest disagreements about, but what do we do about this here and now? Because here and now people are being hurt.
Yeah.
But I think it is powerful to look at movements like what Dr. King initiated, saying,
I was just thinking about him.
It is difficult for even an evil world to continue to push and press and crush and murder and destroy those who sit silently with no attempt to harm, with no attempt to fight back. It was the nonviolent movement of Dr. King, among others, that I think led within just a generation or two to massive changes in civil rights. And I think there's something there for us as Christians. And again, he drew his ethic from his Christian faith. But there's something there for us as Christians to consider, especially when the going gets tough for us as believers. How do we fight powers of darkness and evil that want to take us out?
Well, I think I was just thinking of Dr. King because as you draw attention to like words matter.
Yeah,
words are powerful.
Yes,
I think part of the temptation for ministers today is to get distracted from that. Even like pastors whose work is with words. They're like, no, I'm going to do this PowerPoint and this visual aid and this gimmick and whatever. It's like, dude, our tool is words. Use that tool. Don't get distracted by ChatGPT. Like that can be helpful. That can help sharpen your word.
Yeah.
But don't outsource words.
Yep.
That matters so much. Like when Martin Luther King Jr. gave the I Have a Dream speech, he wasn't like, next slide, please. Next slide, please.
Yeah.
He used language.
Yep.
And I think that that's an important reminder.
Yep.
And interestingly, just to keep riffing on, I have a book called The Preacher King, and it's all about MLKJ as his development as a communicator. His dad's a pastor. He's dedicated himself to understanding this tradition, this craft. It reminds me like Bob Dylan, who had like mastered the sort of like the folk music genre and then could riff out of that.
Yeah.
But it's the typical, we all want to like platform ourselves like sooner rather than not do the work.
Yes.
And God is like, no, formation before platforming.
Yeah.
And that involves work with words for those who are going to be witnesses.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important reminder for pastors in our day who would there's just an onslaught of information.
Yeah.
And but all the more then we need to slow down with the right words. And if you got bandwidth for it, learn Greek and Hebrew. Like get skin to skin contact. David Ben-Gurion, founding father of Israel, says, I think he said, to translate is to clip the bird's wings, or maybe that's some sort of like Zen statement. I don't know, but maybe Ben-Gurion said, to read a book through a translation is like kissing a woman through a veil. It's like she's there, but there's also this thing between you.
Yeah.
And so learning Greek and Hebrew for me has been just like the eruption point of interest, being like, dude, this stuff is so good.
Well, and I think behind that is this concept that words don't have meaning, but meanings have words.
Talk more. What does that mean?
Words don't have meanings.
Like 13th century nominalism.
But meanings have words.
Okay.
So I'm not using a word because that word has an attached meaning, because the same word could mean something different 400 years apart.
Yeah.
But meanings, if I have a meaning I'm trying to convey to someone, I have to pick the right words, the right series of words, the right configuration of words in the right way with the right tone and the right expression to convey the meaning I'm trying to convey.
Yeah.
And that meaning is there whether the words I'll eventually use to express that are in English or in Hebrew or in Greek or in Spanish. And for people who are like multilingual, I think they have a sense of being able to attach like a fuller sense of the meaning when they're hearing it in a language they fully understand. I don't even know like 100% where I'm going with this, but I love that idea, okay, that there's a meaning I'm reaching for, and the specific words that I'm choosing are getting at something that's fundamental.
Yeah. I think part of what you're trying to say maybe is, there's this trendy phrase, especially in like religious studies, like meaning making. We're making meaning. But maybe meaning is already there to be discovered.
Yeah.
You're not making it.
Yep.
I mean, there's a circularity here.
Yeah.
In fact, great book by Judith Wolfe. She's a theologian in Britain. It's called The Theological Imagination. She talks about this circularity between, on the one hand, finding what is already there before you, but also making it in a way too. And so this is how our brains work, consciousness works. But to the whole idea of meaning, we're not inventing this stuff. God has created a world of significance.
And order.
And so language is signification. It is a way of signifying a pre-existent significance that is not of our own making. It's there. And the prophetic imagery, this prophetic task, after you've eaten the book, after you've let it saturate your life, would seem to be to use these tools to open up portals to God's realm of meaning. I don't know. Are we getting lost in abstractions here?
Maybe a tiny bit. So let's get right back to the scripture
Let's go back
again.
to the Bible.
Okay? So here's some things that I also find interesting. It talks about how their bodies will lie in the street of the great city. Which is figuratively called Sodom and Egypt. Where also their Lord was crucified. When I read this, I think this is Israel, Jerusalem specifically. What do you think when you're reading that?
I think that that's a layer. I mean, I think that the guys down the hill from Jerusalem and Qumran were looking up the hill and saying, yeah, that's Sodom up there. Even though, ironically, historically, Sodom is probably closer to those guys out in the Salt Sea, the Dead Sea, So there is literary evidence of other Jews pointing to Jerusalem and saying, no, that's Sodom now, that's Egypt. By the way, we see this. The New Testament does this. Like in the story of Jesus in Jesus's birth in Matthew, Herod the Great, as he's trying to kill baby Jesus, and he ends up killing all the boys in the region. Who does that sound like? It sounds like Pharaoh in the book of Exodus, killing all the Israelite boys. So here's the critique. Matthew is saying the so-called king of the Jews, Herod, is no better than Pharaoh. He is Egypt personified among us. Also, like in Judges 19, which is this really gruesome story of this dude who's got a concubine, and the men of Benjamin come, and they actually want to like gang rape a man. He said, no, we're getting out of here. So they brutalize this woman. She dies. He cuts up her body, sends it to her. But what's it saying? That passage is saying very clearly, Sodom and Gomorrah has come into the people of the people of Israel now.
100%.
And so this idea of critiquing the people of God and saying, we're no better than our Egyptian taskmasters. We're no better than the crazies in Sodom. That has a long precedent. But the other thing that I would say is there's a dimension of Rome here as well. Like Jesus, it was Roman nails that put him on the cross. So I think what this challenges us to do, Nathan, is it gives us tools to ask, where am I? If I'm in Jerusalem, okay, but am I really in like Egypt? Am I really in Sodom? If I'm in San Francisco, where really am I? Am I in Corinth? Am I in? Like it's this associative imagination, what Arthur Kessler calls the eureka of bisociative experience, where you're saying these two realities, boom, overlap. And that's at the heart of what poetry is. But it's also at the heart of what biblical prophecy is. It says these two things that seem aloof are not. They are close.
I think that Jesus picks up on this tradition of the prophets who, yes, they prophesy against others, but more often than not, they're prophesying against the sin and the rebellion within the ranks of God's people.
Judgment begins in the house.
And so I think of Jesus' words, which ironically are right before a pretty apocalyptic passage in Matthew chapter 24. But in Matthew 23, Jesus says, "O Jerusalem, Jerusalem, you who kill the prophets and stone those sent to you.
Yeah.
How often I have longed to gather your children together as a hen gathers her chicks under her wings, but you were not willing. Look, your house is left to you desolate, for I tell you, you will not see me again until you say, blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord." And I just think of, the intentionality of John calling out this space as being figuratively Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. He's not calling out the really good aspects of Jerusalem, it doesn't seem to me. He's not calling out the aspects of faithful Jerusalem. He's calling out Jerusalem as it stands in for exactly what Jesus is calling out in that passage. The part of Jerusalem, the part of the heart of stone that has turned away from loving God with all of heart, soul, mind, and strength, and instead kills the prophets, just like Jesus. What are some things that you see there?
Jesus fastens on this. Your house is left to you desolate.
Yeah.
In Hebrew, the Temple Mount, what we call the Temple Mount, in Hebrew is called Har Habayit, which means the mountain of the house.
Yeah.
And so the temple, as a building, as a symbol, was the beating heart of Jerusalem. And Jesus saw that its days are numbered.
Yep.
Like it's charting a course nationally, politically, spiritually, that is going to get it pummeled by the Romans. That happens. And then, so that matters in Revelation 11, where he says, take this measuring rod and go measure the temple, right?
Yep.
That is to say, they're living in a time, depending on when John is writing, whether the temple is still standing,
pre-70,
and whether it's besieged and like its days are numbered, or if it's already gone.
Yep.
But the question of where is God's templing presence in the world today? And the Christians really saw that themselves as that.
Yes.
And man, that's for me that's one of those things as a Christian that you can get used to saying. Then every once in a while you'll be arrested with the significance of what that means.
Yep.
And I ask myself, like, am I living in such a way that I'm the temple of God?
Yep.
More often than not, the answer is no.
Well, and I think that this is important for us to reflect on as a church, and for those who are watching, whatever specific church community you're a part of. What does it mean to be this measured off temple? Okay, this space that has been preserved, restored, the space that's being protected amidst what was supposed to be the holy city, but isn't. What does it mean for us as Christians, and for you as a Christian in your church, for us as Christians in a broader culture, to be the temple of the Holy Spirit, the place where God resides and dwells, even when the stuff around us that's supposed to look like us and supposed to do what we're doing and supposed to have a heart for God doesn't.
Yeah.
And remaining faithful in that space. Because it says here, there has been the temple that's been measured off, but the outer court, don't measure it. It's been given over to the Gentiles. They'll trample on the holy city for 42 months. And there are some commentators who think, well, hey, maybe this just means that, that's just the world. That's the non-believers. That's the people that don't love God. But there are others who say that may be true to some extent, but what if this is the unfaithful within the people of God? What if there's kind of like a sifting happening here, where we're seeing kind of three rings? Because this is the outlay of the temple originally. There's, the Holy of Holies and the holy place, and the court of the Jews, the court of the Gentiles, and all the kind of rings outward.
Circle, yeah.
And are we seeing some of that here, where you have the temple that's been measured off, the outer court for the Gentiles, the city that's figuratively called Sodom and Egypt? But among God's people, not all of them are God's people. Like, not all who are Israel are Israel. And in the same way, not all who say, I'm a Christian, actually are a Christian.
Yeah.
And not all who go to church on Sunday actually have a renewed heart and the spirit of the living God dwelling within them. And I think that's like a sobering thing to reflect on. because it's not the label that we apply to ourselves that saves us. It's, as we've already seen in Revelation, it's the seal that God puts on his faithful people. Mm-hmm. And there is this element of being saved through our faithfulness to God, being, and not, by that I don't mean we get our salvation because we were faithful to God, but that through our faithfulness and our martyrdom, even then God's restoration can happen. Even when the people of the world have done their worst, like that's what we see in this story right here. It isn't that God intervenes and keeps these two witnesses from being killed. He's given them power, but even their power is not enough to keep them from being killed. They're killed, and their bodies are left in the street to be mocked. But then, when evil has done its worst, God raises them back to life. Yeah. And that's when people freak out. Yeah. Because people see power all the time.
Right.
People see forcefulness all the time. But when they've done their worst and they've killed you, and that isn't even enough,
right?
That's when people start to get freaked out.
And what's interesting, they don't just freak out, they turn to God.
Yeah.
And so we see here in verse 13, a repentance, that is to say, the death of these witnesses succeeds where the plagues had failed.
Yeah.
The plagues just hardened people.
Yep.
But this actually softens people and turns them to God. And I think we see the death and resurrection here of something else. The death and resurrection of the city.
Yeah.
Like, in much of the Bible, it'd be possible to sort of like have an anti-city theology. The cities are the bad place. Yep. We need to go out of the city.
Yep.
But this book ends with a glorious healed city. Yeah. And I think, I was just looking at some demographics the other day. 75% of Americans live in either urban cores or suburban metro regions. Only like 23% of Americans live in rural areas.
Yeah.
3 out of 4 Americans are oriented around cities. Yep. And we have to think really clearly about what is the role of the city and the people of in multiple levels, sociologically, economically, culturally, etc. It says here Jesus was killed in the great city, and that's like it could make us suspicious of cities. But I think Revelation and other books like Isaiah with its Zion theology actually have a redemptive vision of the city.
Yes.
And I think that that's really important. I think Tim Keller, I've learned so much from his book, Center Church, doing balanced gospel-centered ministry in your city, has a whole he like champions the city without sort of idealizing it and saying, oh, isn't it perfect and beautiful and romantic?
Yep.
No, it's incredibly, there's tensions, there's pressures.
Yep.
It's sometimes the worst of humanity.
Yeah.
But that's just there that God is going to redeem. And so the death and resurrection of the city, I think is a theme I also see in Revelation.
And that's so true. And we can't forget that en route to that death and resurrection of the city is like the painful part. In chapter 11, right here at that very hour, there was a severe earthquake and a tenth of the city collapsed. And if that city is meant to be a reflection of Jerusalem or us as the church or whatever, there is a weeding out, a rightful breaking down so that the rebuilding can begin. And I'm reminded again of that plumb line that we see reflected in previous passages in the Old Testament of what was meant to be perfectly straight and aligned according to God's law and God's will is not.
Yeah.
And it's time for a portion of destruction to begin so that the remaking can happen rightly.
Yeah. The Azusa Street revival in like 1905, 1906 happens in LA.
Yep.
And a lot of it is very interested in this kind of biblical imagery.
Yeah.
And then what happens is the major earthquake and fire that destroys San Francisco.
Yeah.
They're looking up the coast a few hundred miles and being like, oh my gosh, it's happening.
Yeah.
And this energized two things, one not good. What it energized good is the sort of the evangelistic fervor
very missional
of the charismatic church.
Yes. So missional in their belief of God's Holy Spirit showing up in tongues that there were actually missionaries who would get on a boat to a foreign country without learning the language or the culture, but with the steadfast belief that my God can do anything. And when I land on the shores of whatever country that is, I'm going to be gifted with that gift of tongues.
And were they?
Often not.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, that leads to the second thing.
Yeah.
Which is an urgency that undermined careful study.
Yes.
That's to say, you know what? The world's going to die any minute. Everybody's going to hell. I don't have time to learn Greek or I don't have time to learn this stuff. The Spirit of God's going to help me. Let's just go. It's go time. And this ties in with a tradition of American pragmatism.
Yes.
That's the turn from the quest for truth to the quest for results.
Yes.
And I mean, dude, American pragmatism is a philosophical tradition. It's arguably America's one contribution to the long story of global philosophy. But the point is to say is that a book like Revelation has and still can undermine the very sort of careful study that is required to understand it well.
Yeah.
And I think, I guess in my own life, I'm trying to, as one Christian, trying to say, how can I hold both of these things together?
Yeah.
A sort of activistic obedience married with a sort of contemplative, receptive study. Can those things go together?
Yeah.
And I, as a pastor at a charismatic church, like I want to move in the Spirit of God. I want to have that freedom and see that power, but I don't want to do it at the expense of, or even feeling like you need to like denigrate and look down upon people who have gifts of the mind to study and to go deep and study. Yeah, this makes me think of San Francisco 1906 and all that, because that is what the early Pentecostals were thinking about.
Yeah.
Let's land this chapter. Let's read the second half, huh?
Yeah, so here we go.
Okay.
Verse 15, the seventh angel sounded his trumpet. There were loud voices in heaven, which said, the kingdom of the world has become the kingdom of our Lord and of his Christ, and he will reign forever and ever.
I love like the organ should be crashing there.
Come on. And he shall reign forever and ever.
I guess this, I was reading NT right, I guess this statement, mistranslated because using the King James version, using wrong Greek manuscripts, this statement is over in Westminster Abbey where all the British monarchs are crowned. It's like over the altar right there.
Wow.
And it's a profound insight to basically say like, you are put on notice, new king or queen. This crown is borrowed. It's not yours. There's a bigger kingdom.
Well, that's why
beautiful, man.
That's why I love the fact that Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John use the word gospel for what they're writing, because that word in Greek,
it's good news.
It's good news, but that word was used to announce the coming of a new king.
Oh yeah, you're right.
So it's not just a random word that's like, oh, it's good news. That's cute. No, this is like. And now officially announcing the inauguration.
It's like the headline the day after an election.
Yes.
Biden wins. Trump wins.
Yes.
Jesus wins.
Yeah.
Like it's
somebody new is in charge.
Yes.
And
wow.
And it's we're going to be diving into this in chapter 12 in a coming week. But I love that phrase. It says, the 24 elders who were seated on their thrones before God fell on their faces and worshiped, saying, we give thanks to you, Lord God Almighty, the one who is and who was, because you have taken your great power and have begun to reign. The nations were angry, and your wrath has come. The time has come for judging the dead, for rewarding your servants, the prophets, and your saints and those who reverence your name, both small and great, and for destroying those who destroy the earth. Then God's temple in heaven was opened, and within his temple was seen the ark of his covenant. And there came flashes of lightning, rumblings, peals of thunder, an earthquake, and a great hailstorm. And I love that also, because what is the Ark of the Covenant? What is it?
The box.
The box that has
the covenant. Well, there's all sorts of Jewish. Well, so it has the traditionally the tablets of the Ten Commandments and Aaron's staff in there.
Yeah, but what covenant is it of?
Oh, the Mosaic covenant.
Yeah. Well, what happens when at Sinai, God makes this covenant with his people? What are some phenomena you see happening
all
in
this,
the
dude.
air?
Oh yeah, all this fire and the smoke, and the people are freaking out. They're like, Moses, you talk to God.
Yeah.
We'll just take a message. Yeah.
And I love that the Ark of the Covenant comes back as a reminder that the same God that was faithful then is faithful now. The same covenant, God's covenant faithfulness will come to pass. God is faithful. He's not going to abandon those that he has promised himself to. And it's not a narrowing of God's faithfulness, but an intentional widening of God's faithfulness. That was always what it was meant to be from Abram on down, that your seed will come to you. You will have many nations, but you will be a blessing to the nations. And seeing this as like the ultimate consummation of God's promise, of his covenant faithfulness, and the same things that were seen at Sinai for one small nation wandering around in the wilderness, we now see displayed on full display in heaven as God says, it's time.
Right. And to that, one of the things to describe God or Jesus in Revelation is this 3-part phrase, who was and is to come.
Yep.
But here, the third part has been lopped off. It just says who is and who was.
Yep.
But there is no more is to come.
Yeah.
Because the future's here.
Yeah.
It's like it's arrived. Yep. And one of my favorite phrases, man, is, and I'm using N.T. Wright's translation, it is time to destroy the destroyers of the earth.
Yeah.
It is such a profound summary of what God's judgment is.
Yeah.
It is destruction.
Yep.
But it's destroying the destroyers.
Yeah.
The people who are ruining what God has made, and God says, I am done with that.
Yep.
I'm putting a forcible stop to that.
Yep.
But it is not mean-spirited. It is driven by love.
Yeah.
And I just think that is that's profound. By the way, on the Ark of the Covenant thing, so there's this whole Jewish question of what happened to the Ark of the Covenant? Yep. Was it taken off into exile? I think like 2nd Maccabees, which is one of the intertestamental books, has this whole thing about like, oh, Jeremiah took it and took it up into a cave in a cliffside and he hid it and no one knows where it is today. There's this all this Jewish speculation of like, where's the box?
Harrison Ford found it like 40
years ago,
yeah.
I forgot. Harrison Ford found it. But here he says, no, it's in the temple in heaven. And, in many ways, some have said, the book of Revelation could end right here.
Yeah.
Is this song at the end, the 24 elders we met way back in chapter 4, they resurface. They're the worship leaders who throw their crowns down. It's this moment of great, like Moses at the sea, God wins, forces of evil are done with. But John, in the way that he cycles through visions, he's going to just say, no. In chapter 12, we're actually going to go back to the beginning.
Yep.
And we're going to start telling this story yet again from another angle.
Yep.
Which is, it just keeps deepening and deepening.
Yeah.
Nathan, do you have any like summary comments? Like, okay, I'm a Christian. I listen to this. That's a lot of factoids.
Yeah.
Lots of interesting stuff. What do I do with that? How does that shape me?
Yeah, I would say as I read through this passage, I think we are intended as Christians to see ourselves in the figure of these two witnesses. And I want us to ask ourselves, both for our church, for the church globally, and for our own individual selves, when I'm faced with the choice of faithfulness to God or faithlessness because I want to pursue comfort or pleasure or whatever it is that this world has to offer. Our temptation these days is not to like sacrifice our children to Moloch. It's just not like a present temptation for us. But there are a lot of things that we're going to sacrifice to mammon. We'll give a lot of stuff for money and for prestige and for all kinds of things that will buy our heart away from our faithfulness to God. And I think our question is, will we measure our love of Jesus in terms of a prayer we prayed once in our church attendance? Or will we measure our love of God, our dedication to his word in absolute radical faithfulness to the end, not relying on my own ability to get myself out of my discomfort, not relying on myself to, smack down the people that are aligned against God, but to so trust God's power and his redemption and restoration that even when the worst happens to me, I have hope. And for Christians in America, the worst that happens to us probably on the grand scheme of things isn't going to be that bad. We might be urged by the Holy Spirit to maybe give more of our finances in a way that's uncomfortable compared to those in our circle who maybe don't express that kind of generosity, or maybe we feel compelled to do some radical acts of generosity or kindness to others. But are we willing, worst comes to worst, to give our life and faithfulness to God and to not go down swinging, trying to take out as many as we can on our way, but to use even our destruction and our death at the hands of people who will leave us in the street and mock us for days? Are we willing to allow even our death and destruction to be a testament to the loving faithfulness of God? Are we willing to be prophetic people in our culture that have the bitterness in our stomach and wear the sackcloth, not that go around trying to call names and trying to score cultural points, but who are so dependent on the faithfulness of God that we believe that in the end, he will vindicate himself. Mm-hmm. But my job is to be faithful and to witness to his love and to have an expectation that in the end, God will make all things new. Mm-hmm. Myself, world, his church, and good things are coming. There's probably going to be some tearing down on the way to the reconstruction of God's world. But how we behave in the midst of that is important.
Mm-hmm. It's a huge pressure release, or like we're like, wow, I guess it doesn't all ride on even on any one individual, but on us. Yeah. Like God wins.
Yep. Yeah,
man, that's profoundly comforting. There's this passage in I think the Screw Tape Letters of C.S. Lewis where he talks about how sometimes you can have in your study, you're studying the Bible, you're studying theology or something like that, and you have this profound insight into, like, it becomes real to you, this deep dimension. And the enemy's best tactic then is to say, hey, why don't you go have lunch? And why don't you go out on the sidewalk and you'll see the bus go by and you'll see the newspaper and you'll say, oh, yes, that's the real world. Mm-hmm. I don't know what I was thinking back there. I just had a weird little, but this is the real world.
Yep.
And I think that part of the challenge to be a Christian is to say, no, there's a deeper reality than that. It is the temple opened in heaven. And in fact, later in Screwtape Letters, the demon says, well, if your man, your human patient, is going to get into science, be sure to keep him in the soft sciences.
Yes.
Like sort of economics, sociology, anthropology. But for whatever you do, don't let him get into the hard sciences of like physics and so forth, because then he's going to realize that the most real things are invisible.
Yes.
And as soon as he goes down that track, then we're on the wrong footing here.
Yep.
It's so true.
Yeah.
The most real things they don't present immediately to the eyes.
Yeah.
And so I think that I just want to like tenaciously hold the vision that the Bible gives us.
Yeah.
Because there's so much countervailing pressures to say, oh, no, that's the most real thing. That's the most real thing. That's the most real thing. I say, no, it's not. And I want to know about these things, but I'm going to see them through the lens that I get here.
Yeah. And I think that idea of the most real thing is a radical commitment to a foolish to the world kind of Jesus way.
Yeah. Right. Right.
There's a pastor and author, Skye Jethani, who writes a book, What If Jesus Was Serious? We hear funny. Jesus say stuff like, turn the other cheek, love your enemies, pray for those who persecute you. And what if Jesus was actually serious about that stuff?
Yeah.
What if that's the heart and soul of the ethic of Jesus and the ethic of his followers that should define our approach to the world? We have a lot of people who these days love the table flipping Jesus, who love the Jesus that yells at the Pharisees, and who want to take on that mantle of prophet, but are doing it without the sackcloth and are doing it without the bitterness in the stomach. And I think Jesus had some bitterness in his stomach because he said, Jerusalem, Jerusalem,
he's
killed the
weeping.
prophets.
Yeah.
And I think that our approach to the world, even a hating world, an unloving world, an outright murderous world that hates us and everything we stand for, is radical faithfulness to Jesus and the way of Jesus in the middle of it, because it's not going to make sense. It's not self-preservation. Jesus was not about self-preservation, but it was because of his absolute belief that there is a just judge in heaven who sees all and who can do all. It takes so much weight off of how we live.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because it's not going to get me super far ahead in my life.
And it redefines success.
Absolutely.
It like at so many levels. Like after I broke my neck, the question that like gripped me. I'm like 20 years old, trying to figure out how do I live my life. I remember being at Northwest, like taking vows of silence, sitting on my dorm room floor. And the question that really, really just grabbed me is, what the heck do I mean by success?
Yeah.
And I'm still trying to live into the answers, but I think it has to do with obedience.
Yeah,
that's the answer I came to then. I haven't found a better answer in the last 17 years.
Yeah,
and well, let's put a pin in it there, man.
Yeah,
because in the next conversation, there's more dragons.
Let's go.
There's more imagery. There's more of all the good stuff.
Yeah.
So, man, this has been awesome.
Yeah.
Hope this has been helpful for you guys. Man, we just love the Bible. If you'd like any questions you have or comments or whatever, put them in the comments. If it's been helpful, let your friends know. You know, you've got influence over people that we've never reached. So just tell them, hey, there's this podcast that's helpful for me. And would love to see you sometime at the Bay Church too. We're actually both pastors at the Bay Church. We're in the San Francisco Bay area. Check us out, thebay.church. And that's all. So until next time.
Absolutely.
You know how the ancient rabbis said farewell to each other?
How do they say it?
They said shalomi, homies.
I love it.
All right, so shalomi, homies. All right, peace.